For the first time ever, Sergius, hatchback segment accounted for less than 25% of the market.
There's one thing though, which also caught my eye, is that the MPV segment outsold by double sedans.
Surprise, surprise, diesel. It accounted for 18.3% of the market. The share has moved up and it grew by 4.6%.
Petrol was the only one that showed
Decline.
a decline, a 6% decline. And that's because diesel, CNG, hybrid, electric, all of them are the more efficient options.
Only 3 or 4 brands grew in the last financial year. Majority of the brands had a difficult time.
Hello and welcome to Autocar Deep Drive, powered by Kotak Mahindra Prime. This is our weekly podcast on all things automotive. And this week, we're going to be taking a deep dive into data. Yes, the financial year has just concluded. And if you are a subscriber of the Autocar India magazine and Autocar Professional, which I hope you are, then you would have seen we've done an analysis of the sales brand by brand, model by model, segment by segment. And that's what we're going to discuss and delve into today. I'm Sergius Barretto.
Hi, I'm Ketan Thakkar. Yes, Sergius, it's a treasure trove of data. Something that excites me always when I write for our readers at Autocar Professional. It was a fascinating year. Industry hit a new peak. 4.3 million, growing by about just 2 to 3%. Clearly, the base is catching up. Of course, the macroeconomic environment is getting difficult. However, we are seeing motorization gaining momentum. So some of the key highlights, according to you, according to me, Sergius, is that only 3 or 4 brands grew in the last financial year. Majority of the brands had a difficult time. Toyota was the fastest growing, followed by Mahindra, MG and Kia. In terms of powertrains, CNG overtook diesel for the first time. Electrification started getting momentum with more models coming in the market. So we saw electric vehicles widening their lead over hybrids. Clearly, the options are much less.
Slim lead.
Slim lead, 2.8% of the overall market. Interestingly, the SUVs, the SUV continues to reign, be it in the tier 1, tier 2 or the urban cities. 55% of the overall market was SUVs. And, we are seeing the share of rural becoming bigger and bigger, clearly indicating that the motorization is reaching to the last town in the country, and more and more people are getting into motorization, with roads getting built, with rural share almost at about 40 to 42%. So clearly new highs everywhere, but challenges emerging as well.
Right. So that's interesting, actually, Ketan. I think CNG overtaking diesel, that's a big highlight. Rural, I didn't know that it's nearing the halfway mark then.
Yes.
Right. So that's encouraging to see. It's a good sign.
Yes.
There's one thing though, which also caught my eye, is that the MPV segment outsold by double sedans.
Yeah, it's insane. So over the last few years, there was a sustained high demand for Maruti Suzuki Ertiga, and because of the lack of supply, the company was really not able to supply those models. Plus, the gold standard of MPV, Innova Hycross or Innova Krista, that was available in supply in the last financial year. So we saw those models really delivering their numbers, and we also saw Karin's doing its bit, and a little bit at the entry with the Triber. And it came as a surprise to me as well. It was the fastest growing segment in the last financial year. While we said the growth was rather flattish at about 2 to 3% last financial year, the MPVs grew by 14.6%,
right,
which was the fastest growing, and of course followed by SUVs at around 11%. So it was a surprise, and it's got to do with the practicality, the availability, and the distribution of CNG network also plays a big role. I think Maruti there has got it right with the city gas distribution getting penetrated across various states. It is actually able to address the pragmatic buyer who's also looking at fuel efficiency.
Right, absolutely. In fact, I think the other reason for the growth in the MPV segment is, if you look historically, MPVs were kind of crude and not very aspirational. Today, that's changing. They are very modern, very refined to drive. Some of them quite aspirational. And I think that's what's also driving buyers towards this. In fact, if you also look at it, Ketan, what's interesting is the MPV segment. You're seeing also higher and higher priced MPVs. It's no longer the affordable or the cheap alternative. We've gone away from that. You've got MPVs crossing a crore. And I mean, I'm just looking here. There is, of course, the Ertiga, which is the largest, selling MPV. Registered growth, 27% roughly growth. So that's great. There's also, of course, its badge engineered twin, the Rumion, which also showed growth, about 256% growth.
Smaller, low base. Low base, yeah.
But Toyota Velfire, very, very expensive.
Over a crore.
Yeah, absolutely. It sold 1,100 odd units, and that's about 188% growth. Small base again. But
clearly adding 1,000 crore to the turnover of Toyota Kirloskar. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. 1,000 units of Velfire sold. Well, a lot of it is also taxes there, being a CBU. But,
oh, yes. Of course, yes. And discounts as well.
Yeah, true. Yeah. But yes, I mean, adding to the top line at least. So yeah, I think the MPVs, you're right, but I also want to talk to you about, a few MPVs, like, for example, the Bolero Neo Plus, the Triber. Triber has sort of fallen in sales, 11% drop in sales. Bolero, okay, but this is just a Neo Plus, so 4,000 odd units. There are some MPVs that aren't really doing that well. Even if we look at, for example, I'm going to go further down the chart. You'll find the XL6, which is actually a more premium version of the Ertiga, also dropped about a 17% drop. This one is a little surprise, the XL6. Do you have any insight on that, or is it
so just it's hard. No, it's they overlap in terms of pricing. And if you're getting better value with Ertiga, I think the differentiation is very limited beyond the point. The silhouette is the same.
Right.
Probably only the bucket seats that you get in the second row.
Yeah.
That's the only thing. Otherwise, like Maruti Suzuki itself says, their arena buyers also are very aspirational, even as they want to up the game when it comes to Nexa with premium models like XL6. Very little to differentiate, and that probably is the reason why that more Ertigas were available in supply. Hence, people might have moved to a more pragmatic option. And plus, the overall macroeconomic environment really plays a very big role in terms of the psyche, the sentiment, and we've seen that over the last couple of years, the crazy price hikes that we used to see across models. That has corrected. There's more demand for mid-variant, lower price variant. So there's more pragmatism setting in over the last couple of years vis-a-vis what we saw immediately after COVID, wherein people were willing to pay no matter what, and the buying and the premiumization was at its peak. So I think it's got to do with differentiation.
Absolutely. So, okay, that's MPVs, Ketan. Let's get now down to the base, hatchbacks.
Oh, yes. I mean, I forgot to give you that should have been amongst the top 5 highlights of the year. For the first time ever, Sergius, hatchback segment accounted for less than 25% of the market. And the passenger car segment, which is hatchback plus sedans, were less than 30% or almost 30%, which is quite crazy. SUV or utility vehicles, which is SUVs plus MPVs, accounted for almost 67-68% of the market, with vans accounting for 2%.
Yeah.
So it's insane as to how the market has changed in the last 4-5 years. And clearly there's a lot more value being given to space, to stance, to features, to premiumization, and that's clearly visible. And the bottom end of the pyramid has been the one which has been clearly impacted post-COVID. That's also counterintuitive to the rural penetration that we are seeing. On one hand, rural was a big contributor to hatchback sales, but lack of action in the hatchback space, plus number of new regulation that made hatchback more expensive and brought it beyond. Took it away from the reach of many of these prospective buyers. And the jump from two-wheelers to hatchback is now getting steeper and steeper. Right?
Absolutely. No.
And we hear it quite often from many of the car makers that, used cars are becoming like an entry into the four-wheel transportation for a lot of personal buyers. So it's getting difficult, and it's clearly reflecting in the hatchbacks numbers. You have the granular details?
Yeah, no, absolutely, Ketan. In fact, if you look at let's say sub segments, budget hatchbacks, and premium hatchbacks, all of them have just dropped in sales.
Sea of red.
Absolutely, it's a sea of red. Apart from the Comet EV, on a low base, it's shown some growth, about 15%, but on a low base there. But the thing is also, Ketan, we have to point out here that a lot of this is also due to, I would say, hatchbacks now sort of morphing into pseudo SUVs.
Absolutely.
So you have things like the Punch and the Exter, which are actually essentially hatches, but have the appeal of an SUV with the body style and a few traits in terms of
a lot of first-time buyers actually moving into
exactly.
Punch and Exter, and no wonder that Punch was number 2 model, isn't it?
No, in fact, the Punch is the largest selling SUV if you again count it as a body style,
right?
Right. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we'll get back to the SUV.
Yeah,
the hatchback.
That's fine. But yeah, it was the Punch is the largest selling SUV there. But yeah, coming to these hatchbacks, as we said, everyone has dropped. Though if you look at it, there are some interesting, I would say, stories in here. One thing I have to point out is in the premium hatchbacks, you have the Baleno, you have the i20, you've got the Glanza, you've got the Altroz. The Baleno outsold all of the competitors combined.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's actually for me quite surprising, because you have Baleno, which essentially is a petrol, driven model that don't have a diesel. You've got Altroz on the other hand that has a diesel, right? Has a CNG as well.
Yeah.
You've got the i20 Hyundai. It's been a hatchback that's been in the market, done very well. So it's really shocking to see this sort of drop in sales for them. Yeah, the Altroz was aging.
Yeah.
There's the new one that's just been, sort of launched. Massive update. Everything reskinned, even the doors at the side, which you normally don't see in a facelift, but Tata have done that as well.
Right.
So hopefully that could, I think, lift their numbers.
Ignite the segment.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, amazing granular details here, Sergius. What shocked me when I looked at the data closely, Quid's annual sales was just about 7,627. If I jog my memory back, I think early days, that was their monthly sales. That clearly shows that the entry car segment, it's really hard at this point in time. And at that volumes, I wonder, how viable is it for Renault to actually upgrade it to meet the future requirements? Espresso, again, 23,538. That's too low, and Alto almost on the verge of slipping below 1 lakh. About 1,02,000 units. So yeah, it's really hard to appeal to an entry buyer with a hatchback in today's times. And we've heard it from Maruti Suzuki management in the past that they would like to do many subcompact SUVs. Probably, that's a sign of times. People are moving from hatches to SUVs, so probably we'll see car makers also kind of veering in that direction.
True, absolutely. Ketan, I see a lot of these hatchbacks sort of morphing into pseudo SUVs, because you look at the Alto, which is the cheapest, the most affordable car you can buy today. It's 4.2 odd lakh rupees.
That must be the base, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And they've added 6 airbags also.
Exactly. So that it starts at, the Alto range starts at 4+ lakh, right? Yeah. For a motorcycle, let's say user moving up from a 1 lakh, 1.5 lakh would be motorbike.
Oh
yeah, it's a big jump.
Almost 4 times. Something that the company management has been requesting the government that if you want more safer mobility, then move from 2-wheelers to 4-wheelers, and the jump is quite steep. And
it's quite steep, yeah.
It's hard. Yeah.
So that's no surprise there that budget hatchbacks have been slipping. But let's just move up to sedans. What do you have for us on sedans?
Now, interesting. Just like the hatchback segment, I think even compact sedans are facing pressure from the compact or subcompact SUVs. So again, almost every brand posted a decline, barring Desire, because there was a significant upgrade. Again, that was a flattish kind of a number. In the mid-size sedan segment, Virtus was the winner. That is quite creditable. And the gap between Virtus and the number 2 brand there, Verna, is almost 6,000 units. So 21,000 units as a segment leader. And that too, Volkswagen posted a growth. So really, that's the core for Volkswagen Group. So, but again, the segment itself is declining. It declined by about 18.7%, the mid-size sedan, and premium sedans continue to slide. So it's quite, it's difficult with so many of the SUV options available that the other body styles actually have a say.
That's true, absolutely. Sedans are also bearing the brand, of this, because customers are migrating into SUVs, and well, as a sedan, you can't morph into an SUV, can you? Unlike a hatchback can. But, you mentioned the Virtus, being sort of, in fact, it's the largest seller at 21,000 odd units. I would say, job well done there, but also Verna kind of, I would say, lost the plot. It's a Hyundai Verna. It used to sell very well. Good brand. Uh, all new generation, this car, or a significant update, either which way you look at it. You've got multiple powertrain options, which, the Virtus is a petrol only. Yes, you have
Right.
1 liter and 1.5, but it's just a petrol.
Amazing.
So it's shocking to see the Verna slip. And I would attribute that to essentially, the fact that they went very radical on the styling.
Yeah.
The front end, so many consumers talk to us and say that it just doesn't look right, doesn't look nice. And I know it's strange to attribute, just one element, and it's never necessarily one element,
Right.
but it's a big factor, I think, in this particular case.
Yeah, and off late, Sergius, we've been hearing it from top management across car makers that design has turned out to be one of the key differentiator or other buying criteria for prospective buyers. So some of these quirky, unique designs, you either love it or you hate it. And if you get it on the right side, you're damn lucky. I mean, you've seen it with Mahindra's B6 or 3XO. So, I mean, B6 looks stunning, but people I hear at the dealership at least are veering towards XEV 9e. So again, that again is a coupe design. So design is something which is very critical, and it's a black box in a sense, isn't it? Sometimes we don't understand as to why certain models work and certain models don't. Again, Syros is a unique example in that sense, with a very unique design. So yeah, it's and that is where I felt Verna probably. You're right. I mean, kind of may have had to face those difficult time with the buyers.
Right, absolutely. So, Ketan, let's move on to now the meat of the segment, the SUVs. Right, we've divided this into subcompact SUVs and the compact SUVs, mid-size and then executive and premium, of course. In fact, it's crazy to see so much of categorization in SUVs, right? 10 years ago, you wouldn't be able to do this.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, the subcompact SUV, yes, as we were saying, this, has the punch.
Yes.
Tremendous growth as well, 15%, significant.
Absolutely.
Franks, that grew by over 20%. Extra, 8% growth. I think the Extra, of course, deserves to do better in the sense that it is a good product. But anyway, encouraging to see that it has grown, at least. Here, one thing I have to talk about, and we should discuss this, Ketan, is the Citroens. You've got the C3 and the EC3, an electric version of that. 1,000 units, 1,800 units for the C3 and 2,000 for the electric version. Sorry, yeah. I mean, that's really, it's well beyond disappointing, isn't it?
No, it's crazy. I mean, it clearly shows that in our market, it's like a box office. If you get it right on the first weekend, then the movie moves on to the Sunday, and if Sunday does well, then we are on to the next week. So it's similar to the brands entering the Indian market, and like how Hormuz constantly keeps talking about that you got to pay that entry ticket price, and any half measures there, it really affects the brand. And I think in the past podcast also we've spoken about how the go-to-market strategy, and they actually were very bold in going digital while launching, and limited sort of setup when it comes to showrooms. And many of our friends, they look at the model, and there are positive reviews from Autocar in terms of the ride handling for C3 as well. But somehow there's no confidence. And again, it's got to do with outlets, the fear of service, parts availability. It's a whole rigmarole, and in our market, whatever jo dikhta hai, wo bikta hai.
Yeah.
Right, and the lesser you see on road, less is confidence. And I mean, they've tried it with bringing in Mahendra Singh Dhoni, but it's been a hard journey for Citroen. They really need to do some deep-rooted work in transforming the brand. Sergius, disappointing. In fact, I've tried hard to cross-sell the C3 Aircross to my wife. But I love the design of the vehicle. But according to her, it just doesn't meet the premium appeal and the upmarket feel that she's expecting from a vehicle.
Exactly. Yeah, they looked at it from a very, I say, 1990s era kind of thing that people will buy for size and the engine size, and just strip off all the features. It's too cheap. I mean, they have, of course, subsequently now added features, brought it up to baseline, but it's just ruined that image. I mean, it was grossly under-spec. You had a fixed key, the old style that you put inside, crank in. those are not things that you want to see in a car at any price point today. Actually, for that.
Those are all band-aids. You need really deep surgery into, and I wonder, it was a platform that was designed specifically for emerging markets, and it had, when it was launched, potential of 100,000 vehicles. But I really wonder, with the pace that they are, even getting to 10,000 turning out to be a big difficulty.
Absolutely. Hopefully, we need a brand reinvention there. But let's just move on to the compact SUVs. Over here, you have, of course, the Brezza, top of the charts there. No surprise there, it being the Maruti. It has grown as well by about 11%. But there's something interesting here, Ketan, which if you look at this whole segment, it's only the Brezza and the Sonnet actually that has shown growth. Yeah, has shown growth. Right. Of course, there are some new entrants, and we have to talk about the Mahindra 3XO here.
Yes.
Because it's not posted growth here because it's first year. It's a new launch in there. But it's significant in terms of its numbers. It's coming straight into the top 5. It's at position 4 there.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that next year, if we're sitting and analyzing this, it's probably going to be showing growth.
Yes.
Yes. It's definitely a good entrant there.
It's been a case of new models, right? I mean, so Kailak is a new entrant there, Syros is a new entrant there, 3XO is a new entrant there, and I think Venue is almost on its last leg. We should see an all-new Venue later in the year. So probably sometimes the model fatigue also sets in with so many options hitting the market. So yeah, I mean, it's I think one of the biggest factor that took my attention was Nexon falling. Nexon was one of the strongest pillar for Tata Motors. The multi-powertrain strategy really helped Tata Motors with EV, with CNG, and now now with CNG and petrol. So the company is hoping that CNG will actually help them in building the volume going ahead.
In the Nexon's case, Ketan, I think credit to Tata Motors. This is actually a very old platform, and they have had. Yeah, so
X1
exactly. If you look in terms of roots, yes, but even as a nameplate, it's been updated. It needs a all new generation now. I think they've milked this, and credit to them. It's still second in the ranking.
Phenomenal. I mean, and very seldom do we see brands actually hitting their peak in their 7th year, in their 8th year, in their 10th year. So yeah, definitely creditable performance as far as Tata Motors has.
True. So
there's a new gen coming. We've reported at Autocar India. It's called the Garud. It should be there in the market in the next couple of years.
True, absolutely. So I think that will only strengthen the Nexon nameplate.
Absolutely,
for sure. So let's look at the midsize SUVs here. There is, of course, as everyone calls it, the Creta King. King Creta. Yeah. It's just selling, phenomenally well, posting growth as well, 20%.
Insane on that base.
Yeah, exactly.
It's crazy.
True. And then you've got the fact that it's also, if my data is correct, it's the third highest selling model across segments.
Wow.
Right. So that's insane because at its price point where it's at, it's selling really, really well. And, Ketan, I have to talk about the electric version here as well, because we've discussed this in the past. Yes. The electric has met with a sort of muted response.
Yes.
Much less than what even Hyundai expected. But I think it's the success of the Creta that has been the electric version's undoing. It's not a model that came in to sort of fill in a gap. Let's say Hyundai didn't have a diesel, or somebody that, like in Jeep's case, don't have a petrol or something like that.
Right.
They have diesel, they have petrol, they have automatic, they have semi-automatic. They've got all the types of gearboxes, but they've got a huge powertrain choice, right? So this, I think, is just another powertrain.
Right.
Absolutely. And we tend to think sometimes of it as
an all-new brand.
All new, yeah, exactly. I think it's just another, consumers are seeing it as another powertrain.
That's another point of discussion that I and Hormuz we've had in the past, in some of our previous podcasts. Past podcasts. I mean, whether you need a radical design or you would want to carry forward the existing silhouette that has resonance with the existing set of buyers. If there are 190,000 buyers actually buying Creta, some of them EVs there, why won't they choose an electric powertrain there? So it's a debate. Definitely Mahindra's B6 and 9E have created a lot of buzz in the market with the radical design. I think this financial year will be a key moment to decide, because even Harrier has gone towards a similar silhouette kind of a thing. So yeah,
same strategy as the Creta.
Creta,
Absolutely. Then we have to talk about also the next number 2 spot, which is Suzuki, the Grand Vitara. And I would also add the High Rider there, because it's the technically the same, which is the only other model which has actually shown growth. If you look at actually everyone else, they have dropped in sales, other than new entrants, of course, like Curve, done very well as a new entrant. Yes, here as well, it's in at number 5 spot. So, a good start. Maybe not as much again as expected, but it's made a mark. But I think here what's happening, Ketan, is that, with the compact SUVs sort of getting more and more, I would say, enriched. Yeah.
Oh, enriched.
Mainstream. They're getting mainstream with the enrichment in terms of features, powertrain. I mean, many of them share the powertrain to the mid-size segment. Features are shared. Even space today. I mean, if you look at the 3XO, as which we spoke about, right? Great debut over 1 lakh units.
Yes.
It is very spacious. You've got a lot of legroom. You've got a lot of width in the car. The only place where you do notice the lack of that space is in the boot. Yeah. And I think consumers are thinking, well, maybe I can, compromise there.
Yeah.
Have a great cabin, well-appointed cabin, a car that drives well, powerful engines, well-equipped, and not pay that sort of, I think, what's the differential in terms of tax? What, 17%?
That's right.
So they're saying that
28% and 43%. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
and plus the cess, that's another element that that gets on. So on 28% you have a cess, depending on the engine displacement and size. So yeah, 17% to it goes up to 25.
So you're paying, if you look at it rationally, you're paying that extra amount in taxation only for space that translates mostly at the rear in the boot, so probably I think this is why we see more red here. Even the Elevate, I mean, I think you were discussing that with me, right? I mean, quite shocking to see.
Honda's numbers are a surprise to me. I mean, it's really sad to see the brand going to the level that it is. And I was really banking on Elevate to kind of help Honda move to the next level. And despite having the new Amaze, the numbers are slipping, and Elevate numbers are really disappointing. I mean, and clearly what you were talking about, Creta, and the kind of the spread of powertrain options and feature sets that are there, clearly Honda, it appears, is appealing to its own set of buyers rather than wanting to wean away buyers from the rest of the market. And there are still Honda lovers who still come to me. There's an ex-colleague of mine who asked about, I have a City, what should I upgrade to? I like the Elevate. So clearly the Honda lovers stick to Honda cars, but clearly they need to go beyond Honda lovers now.
Correct. You're absolutely right on that front, that they are sort of appealing to Honda lovers. But even there, they have hybrid tech. They were, in fact, one of the pioneers, if you look back. They have it in the same platform, which is on the City. Right. And I think the biggest mistake they did was not offering it on the Elevate. On an SUV where you could have that benefit, where you could, show a difference in the performance in terms of its fuel efficiency, where the cost could be masked in the appeal of an SUV.
Absolutely. And you see, this is a challenge with all the global car makers, right? I mean, they are so linked to the global fortunes. And while Elevate was being developed, there was this crazy wave towards EVs around the world, right? And even Indian government was asking car makers to move towards complete electrification. So probably at that point in time, there was that error of judgment to say that, okay, market is going all electric. Why are we going towards the hybrid powertrain? There's a global U-turn. The global CEO himself spoke about trying to do more hybrids in the future. And even with regards to India, there's a force correction that is happening. So we will have hybrids later in the future. It's sad that it's coming in too late. And I just hope with the hybrid powertrain, hopefully enhanced design, that Honda can again appeal to a larger audience in the country.
Absolutely. I mean, the EV sort of thing was a bogey for everybody. They missed it. And the Elevate is a very clear, I would say, victim of that, In this mid-size SUV, there's another one we should talk about, and that's actually the Windsor, which is an all-EV. Right? Roughly about just under 20,000 units sold. That's been a stunning figure, EV only. Right? When you think about that, it's outsold a Kushaq, it's outsold, of course, the Basalt and the Aircross and a few others. But that's a great number, and it's also dethroned the Nexon EV.
Absolutely.
Right.
Now, what is phenomenal there, Sergius, is that they are able to offer an electric powertrain at a price of an ICE powertrain, and that too a lot more. So, you've spoken about at Autocar India, you've spoken about the space that it offers, the size of the vehicle, the dimension, the features. I mean, literally, it has literally everything. Again, it's a very peculiar design, radical design in my opinion, and I personally don't like the design. But then there are takers. As long as you offer value to the Indian buyers, and in terms of pricing, it has a phenomenal value to the prospective buyers. And an EV at 15 to 17 lakh rupees price point with that kind of range, with that kind of features, I mean, it really hit the sweet spot.
Absolutely. No, you're right, Ketan. In fact, the only thing that we had actually criticized about it when we reviewed it, and I think, yeah, I had done that review itself, was the lower driving range, which they've addressed with the Windsor Pro. So I think it's, it's a very innovative product. I mean, the seats at the rear, reclining things, like innovative marketing as well with the BASS, the battery as a service. It's been more marketing.
Absolutely. It generated a lot of excitement towards the brand, at least.
So I think that's something that, has done well in the mid-size.
But again, surprising, it's a sea of red there. I mean, there are almost more than a dozen models, and only three models are in green there.
Yeah.
It appears that, the SUV wave is capturing the entire nation, but you look at the numbers closely,
the growth is
not easy. I mean, Taygun is in red, Elevate is in red, Kushaq is in red, Aster is in red, ZS EV in red, Assault in red, Aircross at the bottom of the pyramid. It's not easy. It's not easy.
It isn't. I like I was saying, I think a lot of buyers have been moving to the sort of compact SUVs where you see buyers are, just doing really well, 189,000 units.
Yeah.
Some buyers have definitely probably just say Vezza's good enough.
Yes. And there's a deferral also happening, Sergius. I mean, you ask the car makers as to what is the reason behind the current low growth rate. It's the overall economic environment, the sentiment, the stock market, the war-like scenario. And that's the reason why, there is the inquiry levels are still there, strong. It's just that the conversion is taking time. Hopefully, the current macroeconomic environment, I mean, it's quite crazy with what's happening with wars and all. Hopefully, as things improve, we'll start seeing these conversions of inquiry into sales.
True. And Ketan, this also explains why manufacturers are now rushing into the compact SUVs. They're seeing growth there. It's expected to grow more than the mid-size SUV next year. In fact, most manufacturers say they'll see a higher growth in terms of segment growth for the compact SUVs. And Mahindra, we've got the sort of, I would say, exclusive deduction, where we saw the spy shots of a new Mahindra SUV roaming the streets. We all thought it was the new Bolero Neo. Turns out it's not, as we've seen closely and examining the spy shots. We've realized it's a monocoque with an independent rear suspension. There's no differential there. And as you rightly said, and I think it was your scoop, it is the NFA.
There's a new flexible architecture at Mahindra & Mahindra that could potentially do an electric vehicle, a hybrid vehicle, and even an ICE powertrain. And yes, it's the all-new Bolero. It's called U171 internal. The code is U171. Hopefully, next year, 2026, we should be able to see it. And that is going to be the new architecture for the future that could potentially have the new Thar spots and so much more coming. We'll keep our viewers tuned with our scoops in the future.
Absolutely. I mean, this one could be a Thar as well. We don't know what the moniker will be.
Yes.
On the car. It could expand the Bolero range. Yes. It could expand the Thar range.
Yes.
Being a monocoque, and we know they are open to doing monocoques under Thar with the EV, for example.
Yes.
You could also technically have it in the XUV lineup because it is a monocoque like the other XUVs, the 700 and the 3XO. So, interesting times, but yeah, that explains
and that's the belly of the market. I'm glad you pointed that out, because looking at the sea of red in mid-size SUV and even in executive SUV, surprisingly, that was the only segment that declined in the SUV space last financial year. So it's the compact SUV, and we've seen the average price point moving to almost 11.5 to 11.7 lakh, and it's that 11 to 20 lakh is where a majority of the action is going to be, and that's where the future NFA platform of Mahindra is going to cater to a larger set of buyers and with some interesting designs there.
Absolutely, because I think it's what Mr. R.C. Bhargava also said, right, Chairman at Maruti, He said that actually everyone says that the hatchback buyer isn't there anymore. He is there, she is there, they are there still buying these, but it's just that they've moved into this
Newer
subcompact and compact SUVs. So according to him, the market hasn't necessarily moved up or into different directions. He says they are there.
Right.
And I think the data clearly shows that some compact SUVs, lot of greens there.
Yeah.
Compact SUVs, some green and good volume.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
just
right.
a migration, I guess, of buyers.
Absolutely, Sergius.
So yeah, let's just quickly get into executive SUVs there. Like you said, yes, another sort of sea of red actually. Big hitters there as well. We had the Compass, we had the Hector, Harrier, Safari, good nameplates, all showing a decline.
Yeah.
Except of course the XUV 700, commendable there because it's again a model that is quite long since it's been launched without an update. They had very small, I think, variant tweaks.
It's phenomenal. I mean, how is Mahindra able to sell 93,000 vehicles at that price point? And better into it, Scorpio M.
Right.
The Scorpio family, rather.
The family, yeah. This data is the family.
Scorpio, 1.64 lakh. I mean, insane. I mean, clearly Mahindra has got it right when it comes to catering to the premium end of the market. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, it's phenomenal, and something that they made this space their own, and it's a space where literally everyone has tried. I mean, clearly Mahindra has got the pulse of that segment, and they've got it right, and they are the only ones actually riding the wave.
You're right. The larger and the 3-row, you would think this is a formula that is like the perfect formula. It's an SUV which everyone wants. You got 3 rows of seats, well equipped, but clearly customers don't seem to be buying them. I think also for, let's say, for example, in the Compass and Hector's case, 2 very popular models in their heyday, they're just being too long.
Life cycle, guess. I guess it's a life cycle challenge.
Absolutely. XUV 700, I guess you can put it down to as, they say, Phil stars. Some age well, some don't.
Right.
So I guess this one is just one of those stars that is aging well.
I'm going to give credit to the company. They've ensured that the brand remains fresh, and there's something or the other lined up literally every second year. And I mean, we've reported about that in the past as well. Some upgrades on 700 still likely this year, next year.
Right, absolutely. There's facelift due there.
Yes,
right.
Yeah. So they ensure that the value proposition of the vehicle is right there, and some of the tactical moves of reducing the prices or coming out with interesting variants when the volumes were falling. I mean, I know my friends keep telling me that the target within Mahindra is every brand should do at least 10,000, and that direction has led the brand to move towards number 2 position, and they've delivered it on ground.
Absolutely. So let's move on to premium SUVs. This is, I think, as we've been saying, another sea of red.
Very small volumes, though.
Small volumes, absolutely. Fortuner there. I mean, it's just phenomenal. It kind of,
the lion there.
And kind of almost boggles the mind because as a product, whenever we review it, I know we've done so many comparisons in the past. With people like the Gloucester, with the Endeavour when it was here, even with the Rexon,
yes.
If I remember right, and I don't think it has ever won a comparison, right?
Wow.
It has never been as refined or, maybe as well equipped. But I think it's just that image, that buying with the heart, that is
the imposing presence on road.
Absolutely. This is propelling sales for Toyota. It's a cash cow, I would say that.
It's a big hit with the politicians and real estate companies. I mean, the owners.
That's true. So that kind of rounds up, oh no, wait. We do have a new sub-segment here, which is off-roaders. Glad to see that. Yeah, we did that this year because we had some very interesting 4x4s, genuine 4x4s, or what a lot of, enthusiasts online said, these are the only SUVs.
Right.
But yeah, where the off-roaders, the 4x4s here, you've got the Thar Rocks, you've got the Jimny, Hilux, the Gurkha, also very capable 4x4 there. And of course, the Highlander and the V-Cross with, proper 4x4 hardware there. Here, the Thar has shown, if you look at our chart, it has shown a 30% decline, but that's only on account of the fact that the Thar Rocks were introduced.
Yes, that's right.
Right. I mean, as you can see, Thar Rocks, significant numbers there.
Right.
So I wouldn't really say that, the Thar people are moving away from, because they're still within the Thar family. They're move to the right.
And their intention always was to offer different options at that price point. And again, just like how I was saying, they want the Thar family to do combine about 10,000. And it's the last financial year number is only from September, October onwards.
Yeah.
The supplies will actually kick in, and that's been one of the key factors behind Mahindra's mid-teen growth that we've seen last financial year.
Absolutely. Here, I think the only other one we should discuss, of course, is the Jimny. We've done a whole podcast on this. I think Hormaz and I had done that. Literally a whole podcast on the Jimny. It's sad to see that figure though. It's a very capable little 4x4, plucky little monster, as you can call it. But it just lacks that imposing appeal.
Yes.
Which isn't there because of its size. The engine, and this is what I have criticized from the day of its launch. Somehow Maruti have this thing in their head that every Maruti must be fuel efficient. Yeah, it's not the case. I just wish it had more punch in there. Customers, I mean, so many people talk to us. People, first of all, don't go to see it because, they're just like, it's so small. It looks like nothing.
Right.
The ones that cross that hurdle, going to drive it, typically a test drive is around the dealership in the city. You're not taking it off-road where you can see that 4x4 capability. They go around the block and, they're like, the engine has no power.
Absolutely.
Lose the plot there.
And what shocked me, Sergius, was that it was probably designed for the Japanese market. 4 days, they had bookings of 50,000 in Japan.
Right.
And that was a shock. And right now, Maruti is actually scurrying to create capacity to cater to the strong demand in the Japanese market. So probably at the soul, at the core of it, it was designed for the Japanese buyer. And in India, we definitely want our off-roaders to be butch and imposing and have that grunt and have that roaring performance. Probably Japanese soul probably did not resonate well with the off-road buyers here. Yes, it definitely is a beast when it goes off-road, but on-road performance, I'm not an expert test drivers like you guys are, but even when I drove, it was nothing inspiring there.
Exactly, absolutely. No, I'm glad you brought that up, actually, Ketan. You're absolutely right. Its appeal lies in overseas markets. In South Africa, there's so many people who came up to me and, they were so excited about this four-door. Saying that this was before it reached there, and you're like, we're waiting for the car to come here. It's so great. It's wow, and it's doing well apparently there. So I think it's a pity maybe, but the production lines are humming. So Maruti must be just.
It's a new Maruti. Maruti is now catering to the world market. Look at the new e-Vitara. It's already hit the UK market. It's going to go to Japan. It's going to go to Europe, and that tells us that we're going to get more global products from Suzuki in India. And there are some interesting details with the e-Vitara as well. We'll reveal to our readers as time goes by. And clearly, we're going to get a global EV from Maruti in India. So we have a global Maruti. So I just hope that it resonates with the Indian buyers.
Absolutely, absolutely. But so, Ketan, that kind of concludes our analysis of the segment-wise, the sub-segments. But you've also got some interesting data on the fuel or the powertrain.
That's right, Sergius.
Right? Or why don't you share that with us?
Yes, Sergius. So, I started the podcast by saying that, how CNG overtook diesel. So, CNG was actually 19.3% of the overall market, the fastest powertrain growth, or rather fastest powertrain growing segment in the market at 34%. That was followed by electric. It accounts for 2.8% of the overall market. That number has actually moved up to 4.4% as more and more Mahindras have come into the market. And electric vehicles grew by 18.8%. Hybrids accounted for 2.4%. The options are limited at this point in time. Only Suzuki and Toyota actually driving the show. But like we did our previous podcast, we're going to see many hybrids coming into the market. So hybrid was 2.4% of the market. The segment grew by 17.7%. And surprise, surprise, diesel, it accounted for 18.3% of the market. The share has moved up and it grew by 4.6%. And the biggest casualty has been petrol. The segment declined by 6.5%. And that's where the cleaner alternatives are emerging, right? The CNG is emerging, the electric is emerging, the hybrid is also along with the petrol. So the pure petrol share slipped below 60%. So clearly we are seeing, a diversification of powertrain options in the market. market, and there is buyer at every possible alternative, and that makes it difficult for vehicle makers to decide. And hence, we see something like an NFA coming from Mahindra, and we've seen the Koreans actually quite adept at offering alternate powertrain. Multiple powertrain has been the cornerstone of the growth at Tata Motors as well. So clearly, India is definitely going to go multi-pathway, and we're going to see all the alternatives. It's the individual buyer who's going to choose what is relevant from my perspective.
Right, absolutely. No, in fact, Ketan, there's also some interesting sort of insights in this. For me, if you look at it, it tells a very old story actually for India, which is that of fuel efficiency. We've always been a fuel efficient market. Now, if you look at it, like you said, petrol was the only one that showed a decline, a 6% decline. And that's because diesel, CNG, hybrid, electric, all of them are the more efficient options.
That's amazing, Sergius. So even as we say that the fuel efficiency probably is not the number one criteria, but it is an important criteria.
It is still an important criteria. It's at least bearing out in this chart if you read it that way.
Absolutely.
That's a very old story. I mean, for me,
the point is reinforced actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And diesel, I mean, despite the negative sort of, I would say, picture being painted around it, by everyone, even the governments are banning it on certain days in Delhi, for example, then Gadkari speaking out very, very vocally against diesel. It's actually grown.
Yeah.
So people want fuel efficient cars. I do, that's
and we've spoken about it in the past that the latest diesel emission is quite equivalent to the petrol emission. So really, so clearly from an emission standpoint, it's not a challenge. And there the Mahindras and Toyotas have ruled the segment, and they've driven the growth in the segment.
Absolutely right. So Ketan, let's just wind up with a brand wise recap, of let's say the top 10 brands.
Sure.
You've got some interesting insights there.
So I'll keep it brief, Sergius. So the only gainers last financial year, like I started the podcast with, were Mahindra and Mahindra, Toyota, Kia, and MG. Toyota was the fastest growing brand, thanks to the models that it gets from Maruti Suzuki's portfolio and its own high cross and high rider, where the supply was a challenge because of semiconductor and hybrid powertrains subsystems. Now they were available, and that clearly reflected in their performance. Toyota grew by 26%, Mahindra grew by 20%, Kia grew marginally by 3.9%, and MG was up about 11.9% because of Windsor that offered that incremental volume. Majority of the market was in red. Hyundai was at its lowest share. Its market share declined by 2.6%. Tata Motors' market share declined by 2.1%. Maruti's market share decline was rather marginal or rather flattish, and it's got to do with the pain in the compact car segment. The passenger car as a portfolio, which is a critical part of all top three car makers' portfolio, Maruti, Suzuki, Hyundai, and Tata Motors. And that segment showing weakness is what has pulled down their market share. But if you were to look at their SUV share, they're again healthy there. So clearly the market is veering towards more SUVs, and the ones with a stronger and more latest SUV portfolio are the ones who are gaining.
Absolutely. In fact, that's interesting insights. I wasn't aware that Hyundai had their lowest market share in what, India history or
history.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, probably you could say a couple of decades.
Okay.
A couple of decades. For Maruti, it is probably in a decade.
Last 10 years.
And again, it's the story of the last 5-7 years as to how the compact car segment is evolving. Maruti is a king of compact car. I mean, you just look at Maruti's market share in the non-SUV segment. It's insane. In hatchback, it is over 63-64%. In sedans, it's over 50%. In MPVs, it is over 70%. So clearly, I mean, it's the SUV, and which is where Maruti is trying to address. And as we've seen with Brezza numbers and Grand Vitara numbers, they were in green. And with more SUVs coming, Maruti should come back.
Right. And, there's also the last two on the top 10, let's say, the podium, the position 9 and 10, which is Skoda and Volkswagen. It's, a very small market share. Yes, so 1%, basically both of them, 1.04, I think, and 98%. So very, very small market share. But I think for these two brands, it is significant given that, they've moved ahead of brands like Renault, maybe like a new entrant like Citroen, which seem to have had more potential with a engineer for India platform and things like that. So I think, the India 2.0 plan sort of gave them a little flash in the pan maybe, and they need to now of course,
They will progress into 2.5 with the Kailak, which should help Skoda to actually hit their highest ever numbers probably this financial year. And we've spoken about VW also potentially getting a Kailak version of it. So that'll help both the brands. And we've seen reports of how the group wants to reinforce its presence in India and want to invest further. So that's a good story that, we're going to see more models from global car makers and more vehicle platforms coming in.
Right. No, and I'm glad you reminded me about the Kailak, because if you look at the Skoda and VW, there's a very interesting small little story in there. The India 2.0 cars, they share, right, the SUV and the sedan. Volkswagen versions in both SUV and the sedan, so therefore the Taygun
and Virtus
and the Virtus outsell the Skoda equivalents. But Skoda is ahead of them, purely because of Kailak. And of course, there's also, the Kodiaq, I think, that outsells, the VW counterpart, the Tiguan there. So, yeah, and they also have the Superb, which, Volkswagen don't have. I mean, small numbers. But I think at this level, they just were able to pay Volkswagen.
I'm glad that they are actually catering to that 20 to 40 lakh buyers. And there are a lot of these European car lovers who actually eagerly wait for these cars. At least on our platform, we've seen that any Skoda and VW stories, they just fly. People are really keen to see their cars.
True, absolutely. I mean, more interest than sales, unfortunately, for them online. Right, Ketan. So on that note, I think we've covered everything we've had to discuss today. Thanks for the insights.
No, it has been an enjoyable conversation, Sergius. I really loved it.
Same here, Ketan. And I hope it's been an enjoyable episode for you too. Remember to catch us every week, Saturday, same time, same place. We are on at 11 a.m. in the morning on YouTube. If you'd like to watch it, that is, and if you'd like to hear the audio, we are also on Spotify and Apple Podcast. See you again next week.